Below you'll find a list of the scariest places on Earth, some of which you will most likely have heard of, and some of which you may have not. What is for sure though, is that you'll likely want to read some of these creepy stories with the lights on. 1. Eastern State Penitentiary, Pennsylvania, United States. By David Tate, own work, public domain, via Wikimedia Commons. Built in 1829, Eastern State Penitentiary is a former prison in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's known for being the very first prison of its kind to introduce solitary confinement, or what they used to call the Pennsylvania system. Prisoners were sent to solitary during this time as a form of rehabilitation. They would be completely isolated, living alone, eating alone, and even exercising alone in their own individual yards. Whenever an inmate left his cell, a black hood would be placed over his head to assure he remained in confinement. Due to Eastern State's harsh approach, many prisoners were driven to insanity, and as a result, the Pennsylvania system was scrapped in 1913. From then until 1970 it was used as a regular prison and held the likes of Al Capone and the bank robber, Willie Sutton. Reports of the paranormal have been going on since the 1940s, but ever since the stone prison was abandoned in 1971, paranormal experiences have seemingly increased. Reports include shadowy figures that seem to quickly turn away when approached. A dark figure that is occasionally seen in the guard tower. An evil cackling is heard coming from cell block 12. Shadowy figures have been seen sliding down walls in cell block 6. Ghostly faces have been witnessed in cell block 4. And strange sounds such as disembodied footsteps, distant talking, and banging of cell doors have also been heard. 2. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Kentucky, United States. Waverly Hills. Waverly Hills was originally a two-story wooden building that was opened in 1910, however, the building you see today was constructed in 1926. It served as a tuberculosis hospital throughout the early to mid-20th century, a time when the disease was at its worst. It is believed that as many as 63,000 patients died there. The death toll as well as the supposed mistreatment and questionable experimental procedures on patients are all recipes that may be behind one of the most haunted buildings in the whole of the U.S. The Waverly Hills Sanatorium has built quite the reputation over the years as more and more people are allowed to investigate the premises. This has thrown up some incredible evidence over the years. It has featured on shows such as Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, TAPS, and our very own Most Haunted. TAPS captured a figure on their thermal imaging camera that seemed to be walking across the hall. The figure was about 3 feet tall. They later found out that the ghost of a young boy named Tim has been spotted there before. There are vast amounts of varying reports, including full-bodied apparitions, fleeting shadows, screams from empty rooms, footsteps, sudden cold spots, and disembodied voices among many others. 3. Monte Cristo Homestead, New South Wales, Australia. Monte Cristo Homestead. The historic Monte Cristo Homestead in Junee, New South Wales is regarded as the most haunted location in Australia. Its reputation is believed to stem from a number of tragic events that have occurred there since it was built in 1885. From the time of its construction up to 1948, the Crawley family owned and resided in the property. During this time the family laid witness to many deaths, including the tragic death of a young child who was dropped down the stairs. A maid to the family is believed to have fallen from the balcony, and a stable boy apparently burned to death on the property. There was also a mentally ill man named Harold, the son of a caretaker, who was chained up in the caretaker's cottage for 40 years. He was found curled up next to the body of his dead mother and sent to a mental institute where he died shortly after. The tragedy doesn't end with the Crawleys. After the house was left in 1948, it was taken over by a group of caretakers, one of whom was murdered in the caretaker's cottage. 4. Castle of Good Hope, Cape Town, South Africa. The Castle of Good Hope, South Africa. The Castle of Good Hope in Cape Town, South Africa was built in the 17th century by the Dutch East India Company. It's the country's oldest colonial building, originally serving as a replenishment station for ships passing the treacherous waters of the Cape. The first reported paranormal occurrence was when the apparition of a tall gentleman was seen in 1915 on one of the castle's ramparts. The man wasn't seen again until 1947, when he was seen on a regular basis over a 2-week period. He would be seen jumping off the side of one of the castle walls and walking between the bastions Leerdam and Orange. One of the most popular stories associated with the castle is the former Governor Peter Gisbert van Noot. He died on April 23, 1728, the same day he had sentenced to death 7 soldiers who were caught attempting to desert the military. It's believed one of the soldiers placed a curse on him and demanded he came to watch the execution, which he didn't. Later that day, Van Noot was found dead, slouched over his desk with a look of terror on his face. Another famous haunting is the Lady in Grey. She has been witnessed running through the castle holding her face and crying hysterically. However, since a woman's body was found during recent excavations, her ghost hasn't been reported. Sometime in the 1700s, a soldier was found hanging from the bell rope in the bell tower, which overlooks the entrance to the castle. After his death, the bell tower was sealed off. However, to this day the bell has been known to strike off its own accord. There's also the ghost of a black dog who has been known to pounce on unsuspecting visitors, then simply vanish into thin air. 5. The Tower of London, London, England. The Tower of London. With a history of torture and execution going back over 900 years, the Tower of London is regarded by many as one of the most haunted places in the UK. It was originally built in 1078 by William the Conqueror and has served a major role in the history of England ever since. There have been many reports of the paranormal at the Tower of London over the years. The most famous of all the ghosts that live within its walls is Anne Boleyn, the wife of King Henry VIII. She was beheaded in 1536, and her headless body has been seen walking the tower's corridors and often near the spot of her demise. Other full-bodied apparitions have also been seen, including Lady Jane Grey, who was spotted by a guardsman in 1957. In the White Tower, the White Lady has been seen, often standing at the window, where she once stood waving to her children on the other side of the building. Perhaps the most spine-chilling of all reports includes the mysterious appearance of 2 children. They have been witnessed throughout the rooms of the castle. They're often seen in their nightgowns, holding hands and with a look of terror on their faces. It is believed these are 2 former princes, who was sent to the tower after they were deemed illegitimate by Parliament. They vanished one day and it was assumed that they were murdered by order of their uncle, the Duke of Gloucester. Apparently, 2 small skeletons were exhumed beneath a staircase in the White Tower. 6. Ancient Ramayan Inn, Gloucestershire, England. Ancient Ram Inn. Built in 1145, the ancient Ram Inn is believed to be the most haunted house in the entire British Isles, and perhaps the most haunted house in the world. The tales of child sacrifices, devil worship, and evil spirits are believed to be behind the terrifying happenings in this building. The inn was built on the intersection of 2 ley lines, what many people believe is a conductor for spiritual activity. In addition, an ancient pagan burial ground is said to have resided in the property over 5,000 years ago. During its time as a bed and breakfast, people would often flee in the middle of the night, often seeing full-bodied apparitions in their rooms, the feeling of being touched, pulled, disembodied voices, and the general feeling of evil. John, the current owner, and resident of the Ram Inn, has reported that on his first night in the house in 1968, he felt a presence grab his arm, before being dragged out of bed and across the room. John has since found evidence of devil worship and ritual sacrifice. He found 2 child skeletons underneath the staircase, as well as broken daggers. He continues to experience the hauntings and the attacks to this day. 7. Fort George, the Citadel, Nova Scotia, Canada. Citadel, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Labeled as Canada's most haunted historic site, the Halifax Citadel has received hundreds of reports of ghost sightings over the years. Situated at the summit of Citadel Hill in the town of Halifax, Nova Scotia, this star-shaped fort is almost 300 years old, with the original foundations being built in 1749, and reconstructed in 1856. Staff and visitors have reported several apparitions walking the grounds here, with one particular visitor witnessing a soldier in uniform walk into one of the rooms in the old prison area and simply vanish. This is a common theme with many reports centered around apparitions. Other ghostly figures that have been witnessed include an old man, a woman, a man in a red cloak, and an older lady who has been known to show herself in mirrors. A little girl is said to follow the groups taking part in the ghost tours, with group members often experiencing her holding their hands. Other reports include disembodied voices, unexplained bangs, and knocks, mists captured on film and with the naked eye. The feeling of being watched is a common complaint, as is the sudden feeling of nausea, sudden gusts of wind in closed-off rooms, furniture moving, doors banging, and on occasion, people have been pushed by an unseen force. 8. Banff Springs Hotel, Alberta, Canada. Banff Springs Hotel. The Banff Springs Hotel in Alberta, Canada, was built over 125 years ago by the Canadian Pacific Railway, as a luxury stop-off point for train travelers. Don't let its picturesque surroundings fool you though, it's rumored to be one of the most haunted in the country. Terrifying reports include the sighting of a bride who fell down the staircase breaking her neck after panicking when her dress caught fire. Her apparition has been seen on the staircase and in the ballroom dancing, with many reporting the flames from the back of her dress. The main story that is told by locals is that of the family that was murdered in room 873. The door to this room has since been bricked up, but the family that lost their lives in this room are still seen to this day, often in the hallway outside the room. Perhaps the most popular of all the reports is the former bellman, Sam Macaulay. He served at the hotel during the 60s and 70s, and is still seen to this day. He likes to help guests up to their rooms, dressed in his 60s uniform, often turning on lights and opening locked doors. If you try and make conversation or tip Sam, he vanishes. Spend the night at the Banff Springs Hotel. 9. Chateau de Brusque, Maine-et-Loire, France. Chateau de Brusque. Originally built in the 11th century as a castle by the Counts of Anjou, Chateau de Brusque was rebuilt in 1502, by Charles II, Duke of Brusque, who gave it its name. This noble castle is the tallest in France, and it exudes old-world charm, but one of its past residents has shocked more than one visitor. A double murder that occurred sometime in the 15th century within the walls of the castle, has resulted in one of the more popular ghosts of the Chateau de Brusque, that of the La Dame Verte, or Green Lady. The current residents, the current Duke of Brusque and his family, have become accustomed to her roaming the rooms, but she has scared many a guest. She is often seen in the tower room of the chapel, wearing her green dress. What's terrifying, however, is her face. If she looks at you, you'll see that her face has gaping holes where her eyes and nose should be, resembling what a corpse would look like. As well as her sighting, her moans are also often heard throughout the castle in the early hours. Book a stay at Chateau de Brusque. 10. Borgvatten, the Haunted Vicarage, Sweden. Borgvatten. Borgvatten is a small village in Jämtland County, northern Sweden. It's renowned for having one of the most haunted houses in Sweden, the Old Vicarage, which was built in 1876. The first ghost ever documented at the vicarage came in 1927 when the chaplain Nils Hedlund resided. He reported many strange happenings, including one particular encounter with something paranormal. He was on his way up to the attic to gather his laundry when he witnessed his laundry being torn down from the line by an unseen force. Rudolf Tangen, a priest who lived at the vicarage during the 1930s, saw an old woman dressed in gray appear in a room. He followed her as she walked away, but she vanished in front of his eyes. In the 1940s, Tengden's successor, Otto Lindgren, and his wife said they had several paranormal experiences, including unexplained sounds and moving objects. On one occasion, a woman who was staying in the guest room was awoken in the middle of the night to see three old women sitting staring at her. She quickly turned on the light and they were still looking at her, however, they now appeared blurry. In 1945, the chaplain, Eric Lindgren, moved into the vicarage, and he began a journal recounting many of his own experiences in the house. He reported being thrown out of his chair regularly by an unseen force. The current building is serving as a restaurant, cafe, as well as a guest house. If you dare to stay the entire night, you'll receive an overnight stay certificate to prove it. 11.